So, welcome to part two of the lesson on the nullification crisis. So, overall, broadly, we are talking about Andrew Jackson's presidency and specifically the domestic issues he's facing with taxes. So, we have an increased taxes. And who is that affecting the most? Affecting the South the most. Alrighty. So it's affecting the South the most, and the South is very angry about it. So today, in this part of our lesson, we are going to be talking about South Carolina specifically and how they rebelled sort of against the tariff of 1828. That's what we are talking about. Tariff of 1828. That's the one that increased the tax amount. South Carolina, in particular, acted out against the tariff of 1828. South Carolinians campaigned heavily against the tariff, justifying their arguments with the principles set out in the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions written in the previous century by Jefferson and Madison to support states' rights. They also supported their case by arguing that the United States Constitution allowed states to individually nullify federal laws for the whole Union. The South Carolina legislature published a pamphlet titled The South Carolina Exposition, which offered persuasive arguments for nullifying the tariff of 1828, stating that it was unjust and unconstitutional. So they wanted to get rid of it altogether. That's what nullify means. South Carolina eventually revealed that the author of the South Carolina Exposition was none other than John C. Calhoun, Vice President of the United States. Calhoun was raised in South Carolina and supported the efforts to nullify the tariff of 1828. Supporters of nullification, who came to be known as Nullies, attempted to pass nullification through the South Carolina state legislature, but their efforts were impeded by the Unionists, a small but determined group of men who believed that states did not hold nullification rights. Although other states made rumblings about joining South Carolina's cause. None ever actually did. So South Carolina was fighting on their own, basically, for this nullification purposes. So the nullification cause benefited from Calhoun's leadership. Calhoun was serving as Jackson's vice president, but he had fallen out of Jackson's favor as his successor, thanks in part to Martin Van Buren's efforts. Van Buren, who was the Secretary of State, delighted in any situation that widened the divide between Jackson and Calhoun. One infamous situation that caused a rift between Jackson and Calhoun and helped confirm Van Buren's as Jackson's favorite was the Peggy Eaton affair. Peggy, the wife of Secretary of War John Eaton, had been accused of adultery prior to her marriage to John. The gossip mill speculated that Peggy had cheated on her first husband with John, causing her first husband to commit suicide. Even though John married Peggy, the shroud of dishonor stayed with her. So marital problems. So I want to skip that whole affair because it's not really important. Just know that Calhoun fell out of Andrew Jackson's graces and Van Buren became his favorite. So let's see then. So Van Buren also took every opportunity to point out where Calhoun's opinions differed from Jackson, particularly where federal aid to local projects were concerned. One major project that sought federal aid was the national road building effort. In 1830, Congress passed a proposal for a road in Kentucky to run from Maysville to Lexington. Calhoun supported this effort and championed the use of federal dollars for Maysville road construction, since it would eventually be linked to a national road. But Jackson is power to the states. So Jackson, I drew a similar chart up here before for a different president, Monroe, I think. But let's discuss this when it comes to Jackson. So when I put state and federal, rights, where is the arrow going for Jackson? Good. He loves state rights over federal rights. So he vetoed the bill. Jackson exercised his veto power. He acted partially out of his continued animosity for Henry Clay, and partly out of his belief that providing federal aid for a single state project became unconstitutional. Supporters of the Maysville Road project was quite angry, and they began calling Jackson King Andrew because they believed he has abused his power as president. So he became known as King Andrew. And this is important because he used more veto power than any other president. So, taking you back to the good old civics days, veto power is when a president disagrees with a law, a piece of legislation sent to him by the Congress. When a law or piece of legislation is sent to the president after Congress, he has a choice to pass it, sign it, or veto it and send it back to Congress for further deliberation or to override his veto. Now, in Andrew Jackson's case, he vetoed a lot of bills sent to him by Congress, more than any other president during the early days of America. So he became known as King Andrew because Americans felt like that was a abuse to the power of the presidency. That's why he was known as King Andrew. Okay. Okay. So, Calhoun was dismayed at Jackson's rejection of both the Maysville Road proposal and of him as Jackson's political successor. Jackson made his feelings clear about Calhoun on April 13, 1830, during an annual event honoring the birthday of ex-President Thomas Jefferson. During the party at which both Jackson and Calhoun was present, every toast given extolled states' rights until Jackson's turn, that is. His toast, "Our Union, it must be preserved," left no doubt about his position or about his opposition to Calhoun. So we have a president and vice president who does not like each other, like, serious. Calhoun immediately followed Jackson's toast with one of his own extolling states' rights, but for Calhoun it was apparent that his differences with Jackson would limit his political aspiration. Still, he was determined to fight for his home state, and having lost his hope for ascending the political ladder, Calhoun switched his focus to championing the South as a region. And remember this idea of sectionalism. I'll write that for a few moments on the board. Remember, sectional. And what is sectionalism? Favoring one section of the United States over the other. Calhoun was not the only prominent figure fighting for South Carolina's rights. Senator Robert Y. Hayne followed Calhoun's example of leadership during an event that would come to be known as the Hayne-Webster debate. Hayne was serving in the Senate with a fellow senator, Samuel A. Foote of Kentucky, proposed a restriction on the sale of Western lands still owned by the federal government. Believing that this proposal was an attempt to restrict Western expansion and the inevitable political influence of a strong Western region, Missouri Senator Thomas Hart Benton appealed to the South to join forces with him to defeat this proposal. Governor Hayne recognized the potential benefits of an alliance with the emerging West, and he quickly stepped forward. So the South was aligning, sort of, with the West to form a compact of support, right? Hayne was soon drawn into a debate to justify his position. The proposal to restrict Western expansion was organized by Samuel Foote, but it was so elegant and dynamic. Orator Daniel Webster, a senator from Massachusetts, who engaged in verbal sparring with Hayne. Although Hayne was an able speaker in his own right, he was no match for the awe-inspiring Webster. During the debate, Daniel Webster was about to steer Hayne towards another sensitive issue, nullification. Webster underscored nationalism and the destruction which could befall a nation that allows one state to nullify a federal law, making himself out to be a unifier and Hayne a divider. Hayne made attempts to steer the debate back to the interpretation of the Constitution regarding the sale of federal land, but the damage was done. Daniel Webster won the debate with his argument for nationalism, and Hayne lost public support for his interpretation of the Constitution. So that was sort of the position of the South and the position of South Carolina specifically. This video went for longer than I expected, but thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for taking the time to jot down the notes on the board. See you guys in the next part of this lesson when we shift gears to a decade later and talk about the tariff of 1832. And Henry Clay is back at it again with yet another compromise. See you guys in the next video.